The envelope was sitting on my kitchen table when I came in from feeding the dog. It was ivory-colored, thick, expensive. My name was written on the front in my daughter's handwriting, but the words inside were not hers. They were sharp. They were final. Your presence at the wedding is not requested. Please respect our wishes and do not attend. Security has been informed. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down next to my coffee mug and stared at the wall for a long time. That moment had actually begun 2 years earlier, in a season when the leaves were still green and the word wedding had not yet become a weapon. To understand how a father ends up holding a letter like that, banned from his own daughter's ceremony, I need to take you back to the beginning. My name is Robert Hayward. I am 67 years old. I live in a town called Cedar Falls, Virginia, the kind of place where the post office closes at noon and the barber still uses a straight razor. I drive a 1994 Chevrolet pickup, forest green, with a dent in the tailgate I never bothered to fix. My dog is a 12-year-old beagle named Captain who walks slower than I do. Every morning I eat 2 eggs over easy and black coffee at the same table where I have eaten breakfast for 41 years. The people in Cedar Falls think I am just a retired carpenter, a quiet man who fixes screen doors and builds bookshelves for the church. They see my truck and my calloused hands and they think they know everything there is to know about Robert Hayward. I prefer it that way. My wife Margaret died 8 years ago, pancreatic cancer. The doctor said 6 months. She held on for 14 because she was stubborn and because she was not finished teaching me things. Margaret was the kind of woman who could read a room the way I read a blueprint. She understood load-bearing walls and people. She knew which ones you could lean on and which ones would crumble under pressure. She had a saying she repeated so often it became the rhythm of our marriage. She would look at me over the top of her reading glasses and say, "Robert, the people who love you quietly are the ones who love you the most. Noise is easy. Silence takes strength." I did not fully understand what she meant until the day she was gone. After Margaret passed, the house became a museum of small cruelties. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, her garden gloves on the hook by the back door, the indent in her pillow that I could not bring myself to smooth out. I made coffee every morning for 2 cups out of habit. Then I would stand at the counter staring at the second mug until it went cold. That silence became the loudest sound in my life. Then came Emma, my daughter, my only child, the one thread that kept me stitched to this world after Margaret left it. Emma was 31 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubbornness. She had moved to Richmond after college and built a career in event planning. She was good at it. She had a talent for making things look beautiful on the surface, a skill she may have learned too well. The visits got shorter over the years, the phone calls got quicker, but I noticed a change in her voice, a thinness, like someone had stretched her patience until it was almost transparent. That was when she told me about Victor Ashford, 38 years old, tall, confident, the kind of man who walks into a room and immediately starts measuring it for his own portrait. Emma described him as a luxury real estate developer. She said he built homes for people who owned second and third homes. She said his family had deep roots in Virginia society, old money, old connections. She said he was going to change her life. The first time I met Victor was on a Sunday afternoon in October. Emma brought him to the house without warning. I was on my knees in the garden pulling out the last of the tomato plants when I heard a car door close. It was not the sound of a normal car door. It was heavier, more deliberate. I stood up and wiped the dirt from my hands on my jean. Victor was walking up the gravel path in a navy blue suit. His shoes were the kind that have never touched actual earth. He looked at my house the way a man looks at a stain on his shirt. Emma was behind him with a nervous smile, the kind you wear when you are introducing 2 chemicals that might react badly. "Dad, this is Victor," she said. She was watching my face the way a child watches a teacher grading a test. I extended my hand. "Robert Hayward," I said. "Welcome." Victor looked at my hand. He looked at the dirt under my fingernails. He shook it briefly, the way you might handle a fish you did not want to keep. "Charming place," he said. He did not mean it. The word charming in his mouth sounded like a diagnosis. I wanted to like him. I truly did. For Emma's sake, I wanted to see what she saw. So I invited them inside. I made lemonade from scratch. I set out Margaret's good plates. I asked him about his work. And to his credit, there was a moment that afternoon when I saw something real in him. Emma was telling a story about a mishap at one of her events, a wedding cake that arrived with the wrong name on it, and Victor laughed. Not his usual polished chuckle, but a real laugh, deep and sudden, and he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. It was tender. It was genuine. For about 5 seconds, I thought maybe I was wrong about him, but then the visit continued. I showed him the workshop behind the house, 40 years of tools hanging on pegboard walls, the smell of cedar shavings and linseed oil. Victor stepped inside and picked up a hand plane. He examined it the way you examine a toy in a museum. So this is what you do all day, he said. He put it down and wiped his palm on his jacket. Must be nice to have a hobby. 40 years of building. Tables and chairs and cabinets that will outlast both of us. And he called it a hobby. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. Margaret's voice was in my ear. Silence takes strength. So I stayed silent, but I noticed. If this story is already making you feel something, I hope you will stay with me. Subscribe to this channel so stories like this keep reaching people who need them. Over the following months, I noticed many things. I noticed the way Victor talked about money as though it were oxygen, essential and limited to those who deserved it. I noticed the way he corrected Emma in front of others, small corrections that sounded helpful but felt like paper cuts. I noticed the way Emma started dressing differently, speaking differently, laughing at things that were not funny simply because Victor expected laughter. The first real warning came at Thanksgiving. I had driven to Richmond. Emma and Victor were hosting at his apartment, a place with white walls and chrome furniture that felt like a dentist's office. I brought a pecan pie, Margaret's recipe, 30 years of making it. I set it on the counter and Victor glanced at it. Is that from a bakery? He asked. No, I said. I made it myself. My wife's recipe. Victor smiled. That's sweet, he said. Then he turned to Emma. We should probably put it in the back. The caterer brought a pear tart from La Maison. We do not want to confuse the dessert table. He said it with a smile. But what he meant was that my pie was not good enough. Emma looked at me. She looked at the pie. Dad, it is fine, she said. We will have it later. She picked it up and put it in the refrigerator. I never saw it on the table that night. I drove home with an empty pie dish on the passenger seat and a weight in my chest that had nothing to do with the food. A man who dismisses another man's offering is establishing territory. He is telling you that your contribution has no value in his world. I said nothing, but I watched. The second scene happened at Christmas. Emma came home to Cedar Falls for 2 days. Victor stayed behind, claiming a business meeting. On Christmas morning, I gave Emma a wooden jewelry box I had built. Cherry wood with dovetailed joints and a velvet lining I had ordered from a craft store 2 towns over. It had taken me 3 weeks. She opened it, and her eyes went soft. Dad, this is beautiful, she said. She ran her fingers over the grain. For a moment, she was 10 years old again, sitting on the workshop floor, watching me carve. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her face changed. Victor says I should not keep wooden jewelry boxes near the dresser, she said. They attract dust mites. She set the box on the end table and did not pick it up again. She left it behind when she drove back to Richmond. I found it sitting there 2 days later, dust mites and all. I put it on Margaret's side of the dresser, where it belonged. The third scene came in February. I drove to Richmond for Emma's birthday. Victor had organized a dinner at a restaurant where the menus did not have prices. I wore my best shirt, the blue button-down Margaret had bought me. When I walked in, Victor was at the table with 4 colleagues. He looked at my shirt. Robert, he said, you know, I have a tailor who could do wonders for you. If you want, I will send you his card. His colleagues smiled the way people smile when they are watching someone be gently demolished. Emma looked at her plate. She did not defend me. Her silence was louder than anything Victor could have said. I sat through that dinner with my hands gripping my knees under the table so hard my knuckles ached. A man tells you who he is in the small moments, not when the spotlight is on him. But in the casual cruelties he dispenses without even noticing. Victor believed that because he could buy expensive things, he was an expensive person. He did not understand that character is not a commodity. The fourth scene was in March. Emma invited me to a brunch Victor was hosting for a potential investor. At the brunch, a young server spilled a drop of water on the tablecloth while pouring. One drop. Victor snapped his fingers at her the way you call a dog. "Get another cloth," he said, "and send someone competent." The girl walked away fast, blinking hard. I knew that walk. I had seen it on construction sites when a foreman humiliated a laborer in front of the crew. It is the walk of someone trying to hold themselves together until they reach a place where no one can see them break. I looked at Emma. She was stirring her coffee. She had seen the whole thing. She said nothing. You can measure a person's soul by how they treat someone who has no power to fight back. Victor had shown me his measurements. They were small. The fifth scene broke that hope. It was April. I surprised Emma with a visit. She opened the door wearing a long-sleeved shirt on a warm day. Her smile was automatic, mechanical. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she said. She hesitated before letting me in. A father notices a 2-second hesitation the way a doctor notices an irregular heartbeat. I sat on the couch. She brought me water. When she reached across to hand me the glass, her sleeve rode up. There was a mark on her wrist, a red pressure mark, the kind that comes from someone grabbing hard and holding on. She pulled her sleeve down fast. "I bumped the cabinet," she said. She did not look at me when she said it. My stomach dropped. I knew what a grip mark looked like. I knew the difference between an accident and intention. I drove home that day with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Something cold and coiled settled at the base of my spine. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my workshop with Captain at my feet, listening to the wind. I knew I had to act. But a father does not act with fire. A father acts with foundation. Then the letter arrived, the ivory envelope, the words that changed everything. "Your presence at the wedding is not requested. Security has been informed." I read it on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, I knew it had not come from Emma alone. The handwriting was hers, but the language was Victor's. Cold, formal, legal. He had dictated it. She had written it. And that was the detonation. That was the line that could not be uncrossed. She had chosen him over me. She had allowed a man she had known for 2 years to erase a father she had known for 31. She had signed her name to my exile. I sat in my living room holding that letter, and I heard Margaret's voice as clearly as if she were sitting beside me. "The people who love you quietly are the ones who love you the most." I had been quiet for 2 years. I had swallowed every insult. I had watched and waited and hoped, but silence stops being strength when the person you are protecting cannot hear you anymore. It was time to stop being quiet. I walked to the back bedroom, the one I keep locked. I opened the closet and pulled down a metal box from the top shelf. Inside were things Emma had never seen: a certificate of commendation from the governor of Virginia, a letter naming me Builder of the Decade, 1997, a portfolio of holdings listing 7 commercial properties, 4 apartment complexes, and a 43% stake in Tidewater Development Group, the parent company that held the permits for every luxury residential project in Greater Richmond, including every project Victor Ashford had ever worked on. Victor thought he was a developer. He was a tenant. He built on land my company owned. He pulled permits my board approved. I never told Emma. Margaret and I had promised each other we would live simply. We made our money in silence. We raised our daughter in a home that valued work over wealth because we believed that was the right thing to do, until the right thing became a weapon someone else used against me. Before I continue, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me what city you are watching from right now. I read every single one, and knowing you are out there keeps these stories alive. I called my lawyer, Arthur Henderson, same lawyer for 28 years. I told him what happened. I told him about the letter. I told him about the mark on Emma's wrist. I told him I was done being quiet. Arthur listened. Then he said, "What do you want to do, Robert?" "I want to attend my daughter's wedding," I said, "and I want the truth to attend with me." Arthur paused. "The wedding is at Belmont Hall," he said. "Victor booked it 7 months ago." The invoice is listed under Ashford Enterprises. "Pull the deed on the property," I said. Arthur chuckled softly. "Robert, you already know who owns Belmont Hall." "I do," I said. "But Victor does not." I sat in my workshop that night and opened the old cedar chest where Margaret kept her letters. The smell hit me like a wave, lavender and old paper. I found the one she wrote me on our 30th anniversary. I did not read the whole thing. I only needed one line. She had written, "You have never needed anyone to see your strength, Robert, but someday the people you love will need to see it. Do not wait too long." I folded the letter and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I called Earl Thompson, 70 years old, former staff sergeant, the only man in Cedar Falls who knew what I had done before I built houses. "Earl, I need you Saturday," I said. He did not ask why. He just said, "What time?" The wedding was on a Saturday in June. Belmont Hall is a white columned estate on a hill overlooking the James River. The chandeliers are original crystal from 1912. It cost $80,000 to book for a single day. Victor had told Emma his company was paying. His company had not paid a cent. The invoice was running through Tidewater Development Group, which meant it was running through me. He was throwing a wedding on my property, using my money, and he had banned me from attending. I arrived at 2 in the afternoon. I did not drive the pickup. I drove a black sedan that Arthur had arranged. I wore a dark gray suit, the one I keep for board meetings I attend twice a year under my middle name. Earl was in the passenger seat with the quiet expression of a man who has seen enough chaos to know when more is coming. We pulled up to the gate. A young security guard stepped out with a clipboard. "Name," he said. "Robert Hayward," I said. His face changed. "Sir, I have instructions that you are not permitted on the property." I handed him a business card, Tidewater Development Group. Robert M. Hayward, chairman of the board. He looked at the card. He looked at the clipboard. "I own this property," I said. "Call your supervisor." 4 minutes later, the gate opened. We parked and walked through the garden. I could hear the string quartet. I could smell roses and fresh-cut grass. I did not go to the ceremony. I went to the ballroom. I found a chair in the back corner. Earl sat beside me. We waited. The ceremony lasted 40 minutes. I heard it through the walls, muffled voices, distant laughter. When it was over, the guests flooded in for the reception. 300 people holding champagne glasses. The room was white and gold, hydrangeas and ivory candles on every table. It was beautiful. It was also mine. I sat in my corner and watched. The first person to see me was Emma's maid of honor, a woman named Charlotte. She spotted me across the room and her face went pale. She hurried over to someone at the head table. I watched the whisper travel like a current through water. Charlotte to the best man to a groomsman, the groomsman to Victor. Victor's head turned. He scanned the room. His eyes found me sitting in the back, quiet, still, a glass of water on the table in front of me. His expression cycled through 3 phases in about 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, rage. He said something to Emma. I could not hear it, but I saw her face change. She looked across the room and saw me. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked at Victor. She looked at me. She took a step forward. Victor grabbed her arm. The same grip, the same hold. She stopped. Victor straightened his jacket and walked toward me. He smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "Robert," he said. He stood over me. "I believe you received our letter." "I did," I said. "Then I am not sure why you are here," he said. "This is a private event. If you do not leave, I will have security escort you out." I took a sip of water. "Victor," I said, "do you know who owns this property?" He blinked. "The venue? It is a Tidewater property. My company works with them." "Your company works for them," I corrected. "And Tidewater works for me. The color in his face shifted. "I am the chairman of Tidewater Development Group," I said. "I have been for 23 years. This building sits on land I purchased in 1989. The permits for every project you have put your name on came through my board." I paused. "You did not build them, Victor. My company built them. You were the listing agent who got a commission." Victor's jaw tightened. "You are lying," he said, but his voice was a whisper now. Earl reached into his jacket and produced a manila folder. I opened it. Corporate registry showing my ownership stake, a deed to Belmont Hall, an invoice for the wedding, $82,000, account holder Robert M. Hayward, and a financial report on Ashford Enterprises showing outstanding debts of $360,000, 2 defaulted loans, and a pending fraud investigation for misrepresenting credentials. Victor looked at the documents. His hands were trembling. "I have always had this," I said. "I have known who you are since you walked up my gravel path and called my work a hobby." I stood up. "I am not going to make a scene, Victor. I am going to tell the truth. And I am going to let my daughter decide what she does with it." I walked toward the head table. The room was beginning to quiet. People could sense a shift the way animals sense weather. Emma was standing near the cake table. Her dress was beautiful. Her face was not. "Dad," she whispered, "you cannot be here." Victor said many things, I told her. Most of them were not true. I told her about the debts. I told her about the fraud investigation. I told her the development company was a shell with no employees. I told her that every flower arrangement at this wedding had been paid through a company I owned, funded by money I earned with the hands Victor had mocked. Emma stared at me. Her lip trembled. She looked across the room at Victor, frozen, the folder in front of him like evidence at a trial. "That is not true," she said, but the words came out broken. "He rented a desk and a shared workspace," I said. "I have the lease agreement." She looked at the ring on her finger. "The mark on your wrist," I said quietly. "That was not a cabinet." Her silence told me everything. Victor started walking toward us fast. "Emma," he called out, "do not listen to him. He is a senile old man." He reached for her arm. I stepped between them. I did not touch him. I simply stood there and looked him in the eye. "You will not touch my daughter again," I said. My voice was level. My hands were steady. Behind me, Earl was on his feet. The room had gone silent. 300 people watching a quiet man in a gray suit stand between his daughter and a lie. Victor looked at me. He looked at Earl. He looked at the room full of people who were no longer admiring him. He looked at the folder on the table, and then Victor did something I did not expect. He sat down. He sat down hard in the nearest chair, and he put his head in his hands. He did not yell. He did not fight. The air went out of him like a structure that had finally given way under its own hollow weight. He sat there, silent, while the room stared. It was not a dramatic collapse. It was just a man running out of performance. Emma stood beside me, trembling. She looked at Victor. She looked at me. She looked at the ring on her finger. Then she reached over and took my hand. Her grip was tight. Her palm was cold. She did not say anything for a long time. "I am sorry, Dad," she finally whispered. "I know," I said. Margaret's voice was in my ear again. "The people who love you quietly are the ones who love you the most." I had been quiet for 2 years. Tonight, I had spoken, and my daughter had heard me. The weeks after the wedding were hard. Emma filed for an annulment. She moved out of Victor's apartment with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. She rented a small studio in Richmond and got a job managing events at a community center, birthday parties for children, retirement dinners for teachers. She called me every Sunday. The first few calls were short. She asked about Captain. She asked about the weather. She did not mention Victor. I did not push. Then one Sunday in September, she called and she was crying. The quiet crying of someone who has just seen themselves clearly for the first time. "I threw away your pie," she said, "at Thanksgiving. Victor told me to put it away, and I did. I threw it out the next morning. It was Mom's recipe." "I know," I said. "I will make you another one. I do not deserve another one, she said. That is not how pies work, Emma, I said. You make them and you share them, and if someone throws one away, you make another. That is the whole point. She laughed through her tears. It was the first real laugh I had heard from her in 2 years. In November, she drove to Cedar Falls for Thanksgiving. She walked into the house and stopped in the hallway. She saw the jewelry box on Margaret's dresser, the cherry wood one she had left behind. She picked it up and held it against her chest, running her thumb over the dovetail joints. We ate Thanksgiving dinner at my kitchen table, just the two of us and Captain on the rug. I made pecan pie, Margaret's recipe. Emma had 2 slices. She washed the dishes without being asked. That night, she sat with me on the porch. The air was cold and smelled of wood smoke. The stars were sharp above the tree line. Dad, she said, why did you never tell me about the company, about the money, about all of it? Because your mother and I agreed that you should know us for who we are, not for what we have, I said. We wanted you to build your own life. We did not want you to inherit ours. She was quiet for a while. I built the wrong one, she said. Then build another, I said. That is what builders do. Spring came. Emma moved back to Cedar Falls. She rented a small cottage near the river and started working at the community center, organizing events for the senior citizens. She was making less money than ever. She was also smiling more than she had in years. One Saturday, she showed up at my workshop in jeans and a flannel shirt. She looked like her mother. Teach me, she said, how to build something. I handed her a hand plane, the same one Victor had called a hobby. We spent that morning working on a bookshelf for the church library. She cut a board crooked. She sanded against the grain. But she did not quit. She just kept working. Sawdust in her hair, her hands getting rougher with every pass. At lunch, we sat on the workshop floor eating sandwiches. Captain lay between us. Mom would have liked this, Emma said. She would have, I said. She would have also told you that you are sanding against the grain. Emma laughed. I know. I can feel it. Good, I said. That is how you learn. You feel the resistance and you adjust. Is that what you were doing, she asked? All those months when Victor was terrible and you just sat there? I was waiting, I said, for you to be ready to hear the truth. She nodded. I was not ready. No, I agreed. But you are now. When I was young, I believed that strength was about what you could build, how tall, how fast, how impressive. When hardship came, I learned that strength is about what you can endure, the patience to hold steady when everything around you is shaking. But now, at 67, I understand that the truest strength is knowing when to let the people you love fall so they can discover they know how to stand. Love is not a rescue. Love is a foundation. You pour it quietly, you reinforce it with patience, and then you trust that when the weight comes, it will hold. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone who loved you quietly when you were not paying attention, share it with them. Subscribe so you never miss a story. And leave a comment telling me what moment hit you the hardest. Sometimes the people who need these words the most find them through you.